that was our guest that is with us right now. Probably gonna suck. Before that, we had the Wanderer. So, probably gonna suck. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves for our listeners?
Hey, Luke. I'm Tyler. I am the guitarist and vocalist.
Hi, Luke. I'm Shane. I'm the bassist and vocalist.
What's up, Luke? I am Joe, and I play the drums.
And guys, we have a little bit of history. It's a funny story how you guys met, and I don't mean to brag, but I was a little involved in that, wasn't I?
Very much so.
Yeah, I do remember it going to that. It was the Megadeth concert, 2 years ago?
That
Something
sounds
like
right. It was probably a year and a half ago because I was still an intern, and I was able to get those tickets, and that was fall of last year.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good time. I did not expect to pick up a drummer during that trip. Joe's a pretty cool guy, and once we got to talking about our bands and stuff like that, Joe told me he could drum, and I told him I needed a drummer, and kind of hit it off from there,
And a match made in heaven right there. And Shane said, "Who the hell's this guy?"
Yeah, personally, I didn't expect it to go so perfectly, So usually there's a couple rough patches or something like that, but within a week, Joe was already playing with Shane and myself, and we kind of blended really well together.
And you and Shane just knew each other previously from what exactly?
I went to Neshaminy Middle School over in Langhorne, and Tyler just transferred into my 8th grade class, and he sat right next to me, and we found out we were practically next door neighbors about a week later, and we just hit it off. We started becoming best friends,
So
that's almost 2 years ago.
So you guys become a pretty tight-knit group within the past year and a half. Shane and Tyler, obviously, since high school. Joey just joining. So you're a three-piece band, and they have a soft spot in everyone's heart. A lot of great three-piece bands, but not a lot of them. So why your decision to be a three-piece as opposed to, picking up, Tyler, another guitarist or something else?
Well, we actually had planned to have a four-piece band in the beginning. I was going to fulfill one end of the guitars and we'd pick up another guy. But what happened was he ended up falling through. And instead of going through all the paces to find another guy, we figured we had something that was good already. Why muck it up? You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
definitely. And I want to ask you about, because we went to the Megadeth show together, and Tyler, it was blatantly obvious you're a metalhead. Joey and I know we have similar tastes in music, but this is like an punkish band. So can you tell me about, how you decided to get your sound?
I can answer that. When I was in the Navy, I was just getting out, and I was still trying to play guitar and still get into it whenever I could. And I was working on this song. It's called My Life as Dan Campbell. And I only wrote the acoustics and I wrote the lyrics for it and everything, but I couldn't, I didn't have any recording gear. I didn't have any actual solid gear to make a hit song or anything. And as soon as I got out, I think it was late August of 2016, I asked Tyler if he'd help me. And, he kind of just, Tyler doesn't usually do any punk sound, so it was kind of left field for him. And when we started working on it, I showed him I was embarrassed to show him. I didn't think it'd be a good song, and he fell into it. And he made that song a million times better than I could have made it.
Yeah, essentially, I'm not an avid punk listener. I will not lie to you about that. But there was something about Shane's song that really resonated with me, and I could apply some of my my quote unquote metalhead influences to it, and it sounded a lot better than I thought it would. So it was this kind of I don't know, it's not euphoric is not quite the word I'm looking for here, but it was kind of amazing to me how my metalhead history and influences and guitar playing blended so well with his punk riffs and lyrics and all that stuff.
That is really interesting. Especially considering you knew each other so long, but your music taste necessarily wasn't something that overlapped.
Just to touch on that, when we were kids, We were just picking up the guitar and bass and everything. Tyler actually started off on bass, and I started off on guitar. And
funny how that works.
It's insanely backwards. And we started jamming together, and we were just butting heads left and right. And I think the time apart and, you know, learning how to master our own crafts and delving further into our own passion and creativity, when we came back after so many years, it really created this beautiful thing.
So,
yeah.
In sharing instruments, there must be a lot of gear sharing going on. I mean, what are you guys using?
For my drum set, I'm using a Thomas Starcast.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it, Joe?
Yeah, that's it.
I know nothing about drums. For my bass is an Ibanez STGR. My amp is a PV, 800 watt, and that's basically the extent of my gear. I use basic stuff.
Yeah, I think out of the three of us, I am what is known on the internet as a quote-unquote gear whore. So I have, you know, I've got my Hashtag, I've got my my Pod HT500X effects board. The guitar I usually rock is my my 6-string Explorer. That thing rips, and I have, you know, swapped the pickups out in it, gave it a couple upgrades, the whole 9 yards. But we don't really swap a lot of gear between each other. For some of the songs that we play in like drop C and stuff like that, I let Shane use my drop tune pedal. Kind of makes it easier than swapping instruments. You can just, you know, go down a whole step or something like that. But,
yeah.
We usually keep to our own devices, if you will, when it comes to that kind of thing.
Wasn't there a funny story associated with your gear? Something crazy happened?
Yeah. So a few years back, this was before Probably Gonna Suck was in full effect, I guess you could say. Shane and I had an acquaintance. We knew back in high school, and he had, you know, left Pennsylvania. He wasn't around anymore, but for some reason, he had this RV in his old backyard,
Like way back.
and it was just like junk, you know, stuff that he used to use. It was all trash for the most part. But I remembered that there was a bass amp there that worked fairly well. So since he was just going to throw it out anyway, Shane and I ended up grabbing it. But at the time, neither of us had a car or anything to drive. So this place was like
about like 2 miles away. And I'm not going to lie to you, my bass amp is about maybe almost 200 pounds. Heavy thing. Thank God that thing had wheels. And we went over to his house originally to see if he was still home because we shared similar military leave dates, and he wasn't home. Like he flew the coop and we couldn't find him. So when we went to the backyard and found it, like we were rolling this thing in the middle of the night, probably around like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and it just looked weird going up the side of a highway with a bass amp that played more than the Jeep on the road, you know?
Long story short, our gear is stolen.
one man's trash, another man's treasure. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. We're thieves.
Can't believe he was home when we did it.
If you think about it, they lost gear, but then you got gear. So, like, you know, 1 minus 1 equals 0. It all evens out. And
Yeah.
Like I said, it was headed for the junkyard, so we essentially saved that bass amp's life.
Realistically, if we can go back in time, like it wasn't just the bass amp in there; it was a PA head and PA like 6 different PA
I mean,
heads.
it looks pretty decrepit, so I don't
Yeah,
think it works.
but at the time, it was them like screaming over each other.
Yeah.
so, Shane, this is actually our first time talking. Prior to this interview, I didn't know you were in the military, and it begs the question, being in a punk band and also, you know, having metal roots a little bit, like how does the anti-authoritarian ethos of rock and roll in general, but specifically punk, and having, you know, been, you know, a government employee essentially, how's that juxtaposition and how does it come out in your music or, you know, your life in general?
You know what's crazy? Yeah, it's crazy. I've never made much sense in my life. Everything I've ever done has never led to another step. I know that's like the most idiotic thing anyone's ever said, but when I was in the Navy, I didn't have instruments. I didn't have any of that. I was on a ship, and I deployed twice over to the Middle East. I've hit 11 different countries, and that was all before I was 23. And since I didn't have gear, since I didn't have any instruments, I had my iPod and I had my phone and I had a bunch of punk music on it. So a big thing my buddy introduced to me when I was in my 4th month in the military, a friend of mine asked where I was from, and I said I was originally from Philly, and he said, "So you must know the Wonder Years. They're a Philly-based band," and I'd never heard of them before. So he gave me like all the CDs that they had at the time, which was like 3 or 4 of them, and I listened to them religiously. And throughout the time, I kind of developed the way that Dan Campbell wrote his lyrics, and that's kind of how I embraced my own style. So when we got to Ocean City is it's about a girl that I'm still with over 3 years. And we met in California when I was stationed there, and I was coming home living in Philadelphia, and I have the beach in Jersey, and she has the California coast, and that's where that song kind of originates from. So that's my influence.
Yeah, when it comes to political stuff and Probably Gonna Suck, we haven't really delved that much into it. I mean, I couldn't speak for Shane when it comes to where he's come from and where he is now. But I know that I happen to have some things in the works here. Not divisive, but they are a little politically charged, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. We never really let that interfere with how we interact though. I can't say that we really probably agree 100% on all our stuff, but we don't really let that get in the way,
Not even that. I went and saw Real Friends in the Wonder Years 2 Novembers ago, and one of the bands I was playing with them was strictly one-sided on politics, and after their announcement of how strong they felt about their view, a lot of the members of the audience felt really uncomfortable, and it really diminished the vibe. So we're really trying not to be any viewpoint. As a band, we're not trying to get any politics out there. We don't want to influence a single person on who they should vote for, or how they should act, or anything like that. We're just trying to reach out to. That's not what we're about,
That's really interesting. That's that's an important difference between what a lot of punk bands are, because a lot of punk bands are exactly the opposite of what you're saying. So to get a little palate cleanser from that must be really nice for your audiences. I wanted to ask you guys about your artwork. You guys have really interesting artwork here. So the My Life is Dan Campbell artwork's very good. I want to also ask about this deer head. Is that I'm a little confused. Is that the album cover, or is that your logo?
It's more the logo. It was originally we're all from Bucks County.
Okay.
The deer is just it's one of those animals that I think is overlooked, and I thought it was kind of cool to bring it into a punk scene. I don't know why. I honestly saw it that's it.
It's Shane's persona, is what it is. I'm just messing. It's
my spirit animal. My spirit animal.
No, it kind of when it came down to logos and stuff like that, the only ones I'm familiar with are Metallica style logos and black metal logos that look like trees. So there's nothing that I could really bring to the table when it came down to, what we wanted our logo to be, if you will. And so Shane got the idea of, representing, the fact that we're in the Keystone State, we're from Bucks County. It kind of worked out well, and I'm okay with having it. I mean, even if only for now, but it's just kind of like a harken back to where we're from.
That's an awesome. I was not expecting that awesome an answer. So you guys have been posting your singles on SoundCloud, and you can go to soundcloud.com/probablygonnasuck. No, they're not going to suck. They're probably gonna suck. Space or hyphens between probably and gonna and suck.
Luke, if you just Google "probably gonna suck" GONNA suck, you'll find it first click. I promise you.
All right, so just Google "probably gonna suck." Where else can they find you guys?
We have a Twitter handle,
Facebook. We have Instagram. We
what's the handle?
It's just www.facebook.com/probablygonnasuck. Instagram is probably _gonna_suck, and Twitter is PGS Philly Band.
And of course, I have to ask: is there all these singles you've been putting up? Is there an album, a physical album, that's going to be in the works soon?
Absolutely. The album is something that, while we've had to kind of put to the side for a bit now because we've been trying to stay busy on the stage, if you will, we are definitely working on an album. We have actually an amalgamation for our first album, and we have some ideas that are kind of bleeding over into a possible second album. So, all in all, we have plenty of ideas. It's just the ones we have on SoundCloud are the ones we had time to record and put up with, what we had.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. The band doesn't suck, of course. Of course, they have the best name in rock and roll. If they want to see you guys live soon, what are some of your upcoming gigs?
Well, we've got a show at the Voltage Lounge in Philadelphia not tomorrow, but next Friday.
March 30th.
March 30th. That's at 5 p.m. The doors open. 5:30 is when the show starts. Aside from that, we have a show tomorrow night. It's a battle of bands. It's actually in Rochester, New York. So I'm not sure how many people could make that one, but hey, if you happen to be in Rochester tomorrow night, come check us out. We'll be playing at RIT.
Bring us some coffee and, because after that 5.5 hour of...
And buy some damn merch.
Driving. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to thank you for joining me. Be sure... I want to make sure my listeners go to those shows and be sure to give them a follow or a like on Twitter or Facebook. And thanks for everything.
Thank you so much, Luke. If people want to know about upcoming shows, Facebook is usually the first place we post them.